Okay, we're back, and now I'm going to show you how to do a histogram on the calculator. We have our data here in list 1, and you see all of these numbers. These are the ones we want to make the histogram of. And here it gives the instructions here, but let's do this. If you see it done, I'm sure it will be much easier to do than just following some instructions on a PDF file from notes. Alright, so all the graphing stuff on the calculator is these top 5 buttons. So we're going to click second and the y equals because that will bring up the stat plot menu. So I click the second button, y equals menu, and you see now I have all these plots. Yours probably looks just like this. This is kind of the default setting. You can graph up to 3 statistical graphs at the same time. Plot 1, plot 2, plot 3. And this sort of gives you a summary of what you've got with each one. They tell you for each one whether it's on or off. This tells you what type it is. This is a scatter plot, which we'll do later, not right now. This tells you what lists are involved, where the data comes from, and this tells you what symbol is used, if any. Okay? And notice down here for number 4, it says plots off, and if I go down to number 5, it will say plots on, and so plot number 4 turns all of the plots off, and number 5 turns all the plots on. Alright, so we're going to choose plot number 1. There's no reason to choose any other plot. The first thing I need to do is make sure it's on. It won't graph anything if it's not on. Alright, now our type, histogram, is this one, this third type here. So I hit enter to do the histogram, and then xlist is the list that contains my data. My data are in list 1. If your data were in a different list, you would hit second and the number of the list. You'll find down here at the bottom, above the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 keys are L1, L2, L3, L4, L5, L6. By default, it has the A, which means it'll type an alphabetical letter if you just type in a number. The reason for that is if some lists have names that you've given them, then it would give the list by the name. But you just have to hit the second key and the number of the list. So for example, if my data was in list 2, I would hit second and number 2, and it would change that to list 2. But of course my data is in list 1, so we'll go back second and number 1, we'll change it back to list 1. You can also graph a frequency table, or do a histogram for a frequency table, and that's the frequency is where the list with your frequencies. 1 means that we're going to count each number in my list 1 time. So that's perfect. I don't want to mess with that at all. Now a shortcut for a window for any statistical graph, and for many it will be fine, but for the histogram we'll have to adjust it. You press the zoom key right in the middle of the top, and you go all the way to the bottom, or the fast way is to actually press the up arrow. And you see choice number 9 is zoom stat. So you don't even need to scroll to it. You can press the zoom key and number 9. And, aha! I'm actually glad this happened. I've got some extra graphs here. Those are interesting. This may happen to you if you've taken an algebra class recently. That means I've got some equations in my y equals menu. So if I press my y equals key, you'll see, aha, I've graphed the natural log of x and the sine of x. I don't really need those on this graph, and I don't even need to save them. So I'm just going to press clear for y1 and clear for y2 and go back to my graph. So you may say, well, this histogram looks perfectly fine. Why would I want to change anything about it? Well, one nice thing is if you press the trace key, it will tell you what each bar means. So if I press trace, it tells me that the first bar, the lowest heart rate included in it is 44, which was the lowest heart rate for any student in that class, and it goes up to, but doesn't include, 55.83333 repeating. Now, if you don't know your decimals very well, 0.8333 repeating is 5/6. So this is 55 and 5/6. Well, that seems like an odd thing to use as the end of the first bar. Also over here, n equals 6 means there were 6 students whose heart rates fell within this range. Now, the reason why the calculator uses an odd ending point to the first bar is that the calculator just uses an algorithm, and it takes the minimum and the maximum and does a little division problem and figures out how wide each bar should be. Well, that's frequently not the ideal setting. So if we press the window key, we now see, aha, my first bar starts at 44. My last bar ends at 126.56, and the width for each bar is 11.56. And the Y min and Y maximum are just how low below the bars. It's nice to have a little bit of space underneath the bars to be able to see the graphics. And then the maximum tells us how high up the bars go. Okay, so and actually frequently we like to start our bars on multiples of 10. So I'll do that here. I'm going to change my X minimum to 40. So the X minimum is where the first bar will start. The highest heart rate I had was 115. I'm going to have my bars be 10 beats per minute wide each. So I think if my highest heart rate was 115, then I can stop at 120. So X max is the end of your last bar, and then X scale is how wide each bar is, and I want each bar to be 10 units wide. I probably won't have to mess with my Y min and Y max unless after I go into the graph I have some issues. So now I just press graph, and there's my histogram, and notice this histogram perfectly matches the histogram in the notes, except for it doesn't have any numbers on it. But recall, we just press the trace key, and there's the first bar is from 40 up to, but not including 50, and the n equals 1. So this first bar represents the 40s, and there was one person with a heart rate in the 40s. Then I press the right arrow, takes me to the next bar. The next bar goes from 50 up to, but not including 60, so 50 to 59, and the height is 5. Now, why doesn't it just say max equals 59? Well, because in many situations, we might have decimals, and then it would say, then you might be able to go up to 59.99. So the calculator doesn't know whether or not you might want to include decimals, so it just says everything up to, but not including 60, is included in this bar. So there was 5 students with heart rates in the 50s, and 13 with heart rates in the 60s, and so on. So that's how you create a histogram and how you adjust the window so that you get the ideal picture for your situation. You can play around with it and try different bar widths. Like we might go back in and try say bar widths of 8 instead of 10, and then we press graph again, and it's kind of an interesting graph, but maybe not as nice as the first one. We might try 12 instead of 8, and then press graph again. Oh, and here you see we have a bar that goes off the top of the screen. If that happens to you, you can just press window, and you go down and you make your Y max a little bigger. Let's try 20. I'm just guessing here. There's no rhyme or reason to my choice, except that it probably shouldn't be a whole lot bigger than 16.38. Press graph, and there it is. Now I can see the top of that bar. All right. If you have any questions, as always, get in touch with me. But hopefully this has helped you to see how to do a histogram on the calculator. More next time.